Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching On Point with me. It's been 21 days since the onslaught of Hamas' unprecedented terrorist attack on Israel. But in the aftermath of the attack, Israel finds itself at a crossroad. With its air force already in action and troops poised for a potential ground operation, Israel's government faces a critical decision: to invade Gaza wholesale or not. Meanwhile, war fatigue, it seems, is palpable on the ground. Various surveys have revealed different pictures about public support for a ground action in Gaza. Only last week, a majority of Israelis stood behind the action. A lot of them said that the Gaza must be invaded and Hamas terrorists must be taught in action. But a recent survey shows a different perspective that has emerged. So how have opinions shifted in the shadows of the ongoing conflict? That's the question number one. What's the real reason behind IDF's Gaza's invasion delay? Is it military or political? And I would again say, is it going to be an invasion or invasions in plural? And most important of all, is it because of internal military or political pressure? Or there's a larger rubric of American pressure because American forces are under attack in Syria and Iraq. And that is why in last 24 hours, American forces reacted in Syria. 13 soldiers and 10 soldiers in two different theaters of Syria and Iraq were injured. So the stories which have emanated from the West and publications like Guardian, Reuters, NYT is that America is trying to create a proper shield for itself. For this debate in my studio, I am joined by Brijesh Pandey, my input editor, Levaron, Israeli columnist and journalist, former coordinator, India-Israel Parliamentary Friendship, Dr. Alexander Grinberg, IDF Military Intelligence Research Department, expert of Persian and Iran from Jerusalem Institute for Security and Strategy, and Ambassador Suresh Goyal. But before that, let me take you through certain details. Let me first give you the big picture and then we'll talk about the ramifications of the survey. Over 7,000 Palestinians have died. 3,000 children are dead. About 14,000 Israelis have been killed. 1,400 Israelis have been killed. 1,400. 200 Israelis taken hostage. That's the big picture. So, and this source is Gaza Health Ministry. So we are making it very, very clear. That's where the sources is. The death toll is high. Even the Reuters have reported it. It has crossed 7,000. Now let's go to the another part of it. The other story. 29%, this is a poll survey, poll published in Israel's Maarif newspaper. 29% of Israelis want ground invasion, 29. Which means that Israelis are not on one page when it comes to the war. Let us look at the contours. 49% of the Israelis want ground operations to wait. 49%. Now, if we compare it to the previous one, I'll tell you a little later, 22% of the Israelis are undecided on the next stage of war. 22%. And what's the big shift? The big shift is that a little earlier, immediately after the war, more than 60% of the people had felt that the war should take place and Gaza should be invaded and Hamas terrorists must be brought to books. Now, what is Oslo Accord? A lot of people talk about why is this happening? Oslo Accord took place in 1993, officially called the Declaration of Principles. Unofficial conversation, peace negotiation between Israel and Palestine at a point of time where talking to PLO was prohibited. So something happened, the ice was broken, people spoke to each other. Oslo Accord, negotiated by Israeli and Palestinian delegation in 1993 in Oslo. A lot of hopes were pegged. Signed an historic Washington ceremony on September 13, 1993. But nothing much happened because Oslo didn't fulfill the promise. The settlement happened and the Intifada happened, called for complete withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Stressed on Palestinians' right to self-rule in those territories. 1996, Israeli troops withdrew from all territories except Hebron in West Bank. So Palestinians were given the charge. And today when we talk about PA, Palestinian Authority, the PA is a result of the process what we call Oslo Accords. But coming back to it, I'll just let's keep our graphics. Let's introduce our guest first. Let's introduce our guest first now. Today, multiple messages are emanating from Israel. One, what the Benjamin Netanyahu said. Second, the articles which I have published in context of the war cabinet. Third, there is a public opinion. Dr. Alexander Grinberg, am I audible to you?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you think that the invasion of Gaza is a more, I wouldn't use the word stalled, sir. I would say a delayed is a better word to use. Is it because of shifting political issues, or do you think that it today completely lies in the military domain?
No, I think it has nothing to do with the shifting domestic precision, which does not exist. I've never heard about the poll you mentioned, the what poll, where it's nothing of similar is happening in Israel. There is a unity among all the nation that Gaza must be conquered and Hamas destroyed. There is no other way to destroy Hamas than conquer Gaza. The question is how to do that, and here indeed there are very many opinions, and of course there is American political pressure. I don't know what our prime minister intends to do. That's another question. I'm not a fly on the wall in his room, but everything is clear to all the soldiers and to literally all the people. Hamas must be destroyed, and yes, the invasion is delayed because of many reasons. In the meantime, we see preparative incursions of the IDF raids into Gaza, and it's only to prepare the ground for a larger incursion and to clean the terrain from mines, missiles, and terrorists to make the entrance of other IDF units easier.
Do you think that the public opinion will remain important in this context? Do you think that the politicians are immune?
I think it will remain, of course, but the public opinion is ready to suffer all the losses. Everyone knows that it is dangerous to enter Gaza. There are tunnels, but I hope that the politicians, more correctly to say, the politician, the leader, understands that if he refrains from finishing the job, he will lose the power.
Or do you think, Dr. Grinberg, it's because of the American pressure? The American government wants more time. They want to secure their own bases. They want to move their forces. There are extraneous pressures. Do you think that?
Yeah, I'm sure there is. You're right. But again, it's not just, in normal military operation when you have some considerations you must account for. It is a war of independence. For Israel, it's everyone understands that if we don't destroy Hamas, we won't be able to live in Israel safely. And hopefully, again, Prime Minister must understand. I don't know what he understands or what he knows, but he must understand that the safety, it's even more than safety, of my children, family, cannot depend upon the American desire or interests.
Let me go to Lev Aron. Lev, do you think that the delayed invasion, is it a result of political decision making, or there are larger military issues at hand? And a very warm welcome to you.
Yes. First of all, I'm honored to be here. Look, the Israelis rallied behind Netanyahu's paradigm that overlooked the military strengthening of Hamas. And we got lots of fruits, the Abraham Accords, I-2U2, relationship with India, relocating the USA embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And now what happens is, of course, our leader does not tell us we need to invade, we need to get inside. And therefore, I think also the Israeli public is more confused because, first of all, lakhs of Israelis lost their, they do not believe our government in the same way they believed before, let's say a fortnight ago.
Lev, why did you use the word confused? Why did you use the word confused?
Because usually there is a gap between what statements and what you do on the ground. Right now, we do not have a leadership that tells the Israeli public, we will go today, tomorrow, and so on. And let's say in the first week, we as Israelis, we felt, okay, we have Air Force, Hamas does not have Air Force. Therefore, we have advantage that is for our benefit. But if for over a fortnight, we are not invading Gaza in a big time, it means that yes, we as Israelis are more confused than we were a fortnight ago, when it was crystal clear for most of us that in few days we will see our soldiers inside Gaza, no matter what the cost will be. Right now, this is not, I think this is not the perception right now inside Israel. First of all, we have over 200 hostages, and hostages from many, many countries. So maybe there is also some pressure from other countries on Israel. You have mentioned the United States. But the other issue is that our prime minister always refrained for the last decade or even more, decade and a half, from invading Gaza. And it seems for many Israelis that even now he's fighting with Gaza, not with the full appetite to win the war. So the polls show that we are also confused as a nation. Still, I believe that once invasion starts, we will see polls that support the Israeli army and our victory over Hamas.
Okay, let me go to Ambassador Goel. Let me take Ambassador Goel's view on the thought. So political appetite for war and the military action in any democracy cannot be delinked. It can be delinked in autocracies like China or the way Russia is run. But I don't think in democracy public opinion counts. So what's your big picture?
I don't think that in any country we can delink political and the strategic or the military opinion, because eventually it's a question of cost. Whether Israel sends the army into Gaza, what will be the cost? What is the outcome? What do you get out of it? Now I'm coming to this one by one. I think it's both military and political. Militarily, what does Israel have? I mean, I know IDF is very strong, but at the moment, more than 60% of the reserves which Israel has, they are the ones who have done about 2.5 years of services. They are not an organized, well-knit defense component. They have been trained, but they are not part of really the regular hardy battle groups who can be really left to strategize and undertake an invasion of this kind in a terrain which is so uncertain. Therefore, I think in case of any military invasion, the costs are going to be very, very high. Uncertainty as to how the IDF is going to do the reserves, number one. Militarily, therefore, there is a bit of a doubt. But psychologically, because Netanyahu, when the 7 October attacks took place, and they were completely taken unawares. So there is a kind of an honor for Netanyahu to redeem in the whole process. And therefore, I can be quite certain that Netanyahu probably will not hesitate from sending the forces into Gaza, whatever the cost may be. Political. At a political level, what do you get out of it? Outcome. You say that you want to finish Hamas. First of all, I think even practically, it is impossible to finish Hamas. Hamas, the way it is structured or unstructured, these are individuals who have been ideologically motivated. You kill 20, 10 will go away, will go to some other area, and will continue to engage in guerrilla warfare. Therefore, finishing Hamas will be very, very difficult war objective. Number two, even after destroying a large part of Hamas, what happens to the area? Are you prepared to administer Gaza? How are you going to basically deal with this huge population in Hamas who will be depending on the dole out from different sources? So therefore, I think what we are seeing now in Middle East is a very uncertain, very volatile kind of a situation where nobody knows, neither Hamas nor Iran or Israel or anyone know what is going to happen. Combine that with the pressure from the USA. USA will attack Syria in a targeted kind of a manner. But for them, saving their civilians, refugees who have been taken hostage by Hamas, is an act of good faith. American Constitution requires the government to work on rescuing these civilians. And this is the election year, for God's sake. Biden is going to be looking at the elections in 2024. He cannot go against anything. He has to hedge.
Okay. Brijesh,
Yes.
Winston Churchill, many other leaders, they were subjected to strong public scrutiny. They were subjected to electoral losses post-war. Even India, though never part of any wide global war strategy, but even during Chandrasekhar, the refueling issue became big. So today in our discussion, do you think that objectives bearing upon Benjamin Netanyahu are just political, managing the political contradictions, the sort of pressure which is on him, because ultimately there will be questions on him? Or do you think that the military has been given time? You take a call, you decide, do you want to do the invasions like multiple or one big invasion?
I think, Kartikeya, when, Liv was talking about the confusion thing, I think it was a very important word in the entire narrative. Why the word is very important is, when the terrorist attack took place within Israel and we saw thousands of Israelis, killed and dealt in a most inhuman way possible, there was a massive anger and heat of the moment. Everybody wanted to go out and finish Hamas. Everybody wanted to go out and, extract their revenge, settle this issue once for all and all. But what happened is that post killing, once the first 7 days, 10 days, 15 days went away, now there is a lot of pressure on Israel. Now there are a lot of actors who have gotten involved in the entire imbroglio. Now it's not going to be that easy for Israel to launch an all-out offensive without catering to others. The second situation is, it is not that those 49% who we are talking about in that Mariv's survey, they are not averse to war or invasion or extracting their revenge. Now what they're saying is that you adopt a strategy in which we get our loved ones back, and once they are back, then since the offensive has already been delayed, you can launch an offensive and get your political, your diplomatic victory or your military victory. But till then, you can wait. And that is the reason why you see a massive upsurge, and in delay. And there's a massive decline as far as immediate invasion.
I think hostages are also an issue, because ultimately, you have people there. People have their families there.
Absolutely.
And hostage situation is not something unique to
224
Israel.
people
Even the American hostages during the wars they fought had tremendous domestic pressure on the American presence.
Absolutely.
My colleague Neha spoke to Israel's former Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Let's listen to that conversation and the way he spoke on certain political issues.
So first and foremost, let me ask you, why the delay in Israel's ground invasion of Gaza? By all accounts, that is the next stage of the war.
I cannot go into the detail. I'm not even sure that I know all the details, but there are many considerations. This operation that has to go on the ground because we want to eliminate, as you have mentioned, the physical military capabilities of Hamas in Gaza Strip and put them out of power there. That cannot be completed just from the air, from airstrikes. So we have to deploy probably many thousands of soldiers on the ground, or probably a few thousand, but a long time, and making more and more operations. But this operation is taking place under 4 different constraints. Number 1 is the hostages that you have already mentioned. Number 2 is the risk that it will spread into a regional war with the Hezbollah in the north, or probably others. Number 3 is the international law. Israel committed to the international law. We don't want to repeat the standards of these barbaric terrorists, Al-Qaeda-like. And number 4 is the question, okay, assume that we finished. In 3 months from now, we took over Hamas and erased all its military capabilities. To whom we pass the torch, the ruling of the Gaza Strip. These are 4 constraints, and because they are interconnected and develop a long time, we cannot make trajectory. I cannot tell you what will happen. We have to trust our war cabinet and our Supreme Command of the Armed Forces. Use this war as an opportunity to change certain things that were ignored in the recent years under Netanyahu. I'm not sure that's the right timing to talk about it, because we are at war and we are now focused on winning the war and solving the hostages issue and making sure it's not spread to the north. So we have many other issues, but having said that, it's clear that the long-term interest of Israel fits in the 2-state solution. And we should never lose sight of it. You know, the old Romans had a saying, if you don't know which port you want to reach, no wind will take you there. And I think that that's the right vision. I never lost eye contact with it, but you have to know that it's a big debate in Israel.
So going back to Dr. Alexander Greenberg, so what do you make of Ehud Barak's statement? Now, I know last time, you didn't mince words about him, you were pretty hard on him. But he does take a sort of a contrarian position.
Look, my problem is not with Barak himself, but because yes, he was a commander of special operations. But that's the point. Barak, with all due respect, is talking about all this thing as if it were another special operation that indeed you never do without taking into consideration of all the components. Just as Clausewitz used to say, there is no war without politics behind it. It's true, but it is not, it's another kind of war, because unfortunately we as Jewish people sometimes had to deal with that. It's like the war against the Nazis. The Nazis wanted to destroy Jews. Okay, so in this kind of war, all the calculi that were mentioned simply don't work. When he talks about 2-state solutions, okay, so what will guarantee that the story of Gaza does not reiterate in fully independent Palestinian territories? What's the solution for Ehud Barak? Again, I repeat it again and again. The army, all the soldiers, all the commanders are urging the prime minister to give the order. Of course, all the other considerations, if they are operational, they make sense. But it is clear for everyone that the first task of the day after is not how Gaza will be ruled, but our residents of the south and of the north can start thinking about resuming their life. That's the first consideration. Who will rule Gaza? And yes, it is difficult to destroy Hamas. It's impossible to destroy the Islamism, but it is possible to destroy the Islamists, to kill them everywhere and every place. It is possible, just as the Nazis, you cannot win Nazism, but the Nazis, they were won and destroyed. It's not agreeable to talk this way, I understand, but it's disagreeable to see either what me and you could see.
But then there's an added, I would say, layer to this issue. Yes, it's not easy to tackle Islamism, but you can kill this terrorist, I know you are trying to differentiate between the two. The Nazism may exist in different form, but the world went after the Nazis in the World War II. I know you are trying to distinguish between ideology and those who practice it. But then there is also another aspect. What do you do with Gaza? A lot of people are saying in India and other places, what about Palestinian Authority? Isn't that a conundrum? Because Palestinian Authority in itself has been a very inert body.
Yes, look, it is a serious issue, I understand, of course, but first let's do that, and then we'll think, because any other option is impossible just now. If it were just a normal, between the brackets, operational plan, let's eliminate Hamas just because of long-term considerations, and then it would be stupid to do that without taking into consideration all other consequences. But now there's no choice, ein brira, as we say in Hebrew, and afterwards, let's say, I think that Israel can rule Gaza, of course. If it becomes more like intelligent, or in other methods, but when people say that it's impossible to rule Gaza, what's happening in Egypt, Jordan, Syria? So all these countries are ruled by a minority that understands that if you let this population unruled, so you get what you get. And this is also another consideration that is not mentioned. Everyone who embraces this murderous ideology, like the Nazis, Daesh, and Lashkar-e-Taiba, Tehrik-i-Taliban in Pakistan, that Pakistan unleashes against India, everyone must understand that who embraces this ideology will inflict disaster and catastrophe on his nations. This is, I think, it's very important. It's the subduing and destroying physically Hamas leadership and whoever takes weapons with them. It's good and indispensable for better stability and peace in the whole region of the Middle East.
Okay, let me take this question to Lev. Lev, is it possible to get Gaza governed by PA? A lot of other people were saying that you need a consortium of nations, to take over the Gaza Strip once the invasion is done. And perhaps those rubric and those details are being worked by Israeli government. Who gets to do what work in Gaza? Because ultimately you can't leave the entire stretch just like that.
I will start with praising Dr. Greenberg. I feel that many Israelis feel that the clarity that he shows, it is exactly the clarity that we want from our government. Secondly, the Palestinian Authority...
So Greenberg should stand for elections?
Excuse
me? Greenberg, he should stand for elections then?
I don't know, he should be there in the war cabinet. I don't know, look at the clarity, okay? Like... he knows what we should do. I'm very happy with it. Secondly, a Palestinian Authority is perceived as a venal and corrupt body in Israel and the West. And I think most pollsters would say that if elections were in Gaza or in the West Bank, Hamas would easily win the Palestinian Authority. So if we want some kind of a two-state solution, or we want to bring back the Palestinian Authority into Gaza, we need to reinvent this body that lost also its ground support, not only the Western support or the support of the Israeli center left. They also the support among Palestinians in West Bank and also Gaza is maybe half of what it was like 15, 20 years back. So bringing a body only because the name sounds good, like Palestinian Authority, I'm not sure it is enough, and I'm not sure it is in the books of the Americans and the Europeans right now. I think they crystal clear know what Palestinian Authority can do and what it cannot do.
And let me play out couple of reactions. Let me play out couple of reactions before I go to Brajesh and before I go to Ambassador Goel. of the sort of reactions that are pouring in from Israel?
I can't speak for their travel habits or their conversations with the Russians. Our message to any other nation around the world is this is not a time to be supporting Hamas's ability to continue to kill Israelis, and it's certainly not a time, or any nation out there that wants to be involved should look for ways to be involved to help Israel defend itself and to help get humanitarian assistance in. So we'll see what comes of the conversation.
As part of our efforts to deter a broader conflict and further bolster U.S. force protection capabilities, I can confirm that since our initial force posture announcement, approximately 900 troops have subsequently deployed or are in the process of deploying to the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility. These include forces that have been on prepare to deploy orders and which are deploying from the continental United States. Deployed and deploying units include a terminal high-altitude area defense battery from Fort Bliss, Texas, Patriot batteries from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Patriot and Avenger batteries from Fort Liberty, North Carolina, and associated air defense headquarters elements from Fort Bliss and Fort Cavados, Texas. While I won't talk specific deployment locations for these forces, I can confirm that they are not going to Israel and that, again, they are intended to support regional deterrence efforts and further bolster U.S. force protection capabilities.
Ambassador Goel, there is also, the word which I used was the Palestinian Authority conundrum, because the stories done by Reuters and other newspapers, clearly there was an article in which, I'll quote The Economist, that's an Economist article, it just says that in a poll in September, 53% of the Palestinians said that they thought an armed struggle against Israel was the best way to establish a state, compared with just 20% favoring negotiations. And I'm coming to the public opinion. And in that in that poll, Hamas popularity, which is a terrorist organization, was more than the PA. Now, if you have those popular sentiments running, how do you resolve it? Like Mandela says, if you want peace, you got to work with your enemies.
It's a conundrum. Look, I have been to Gaza several times. I have dealt with the PNA. I have not dealt with Hamas, I must confess, but I've seen what they have done to Gaza. Frankly, before the invasion took place, I believe that there was not a great deal of support amongst Palestinians in Gaza for Hamas, because Gaza had been reduced. It was an open-air prison, etc., whatever it is, but to penury, simply the disastrous kind of living standard. But every Palestinian also knows that they cannot be held hostage to the Israeli people. And the problem is that Gaza, most of the people do feel that they are under the strict control of the Israeli in terms of air embargo, in terms of the movement of goods into Gaza, fuel, energy supplies, food supply, everything. And therefore, I think what has happened after 7 October is that the vehemence of need to do something about their situation, their dismal situation, has grown up. This is not a support for the PNA, mind you, because I've seen what PNA did. After Yasser Arafat, there is not a whole lot of support in the West Bank for the PNA, and the reason for increase in Hamas popularity was precisely this, because PNA was seen to be ineffective and not really taking care of the Palestinian interests. That was a perception. Now, under the situation, the current situation, I think it is something which creates a lot of unhappiness, sadness. It is really frustration at not being able to do anything, and yet one has to go with it. And you raise a very right point. Ultimately, at the end of it all, who is going to govern Gaza?
Absolutely.
Will Israel take over
Absolutely.
Gaza? I don't think so. Yes.
Absolutely.
I think that is where I will leave
you said that you had been to Gaza, you had been several times, but then Hamas ultimately took over Gaza. They sidelined. Some people say it was a coup. Some people they say that it was because of the popular sentiment. But why PA could never make a comeback, sir?
I don't want to say it to the open media, but there was a lot of unhappiness about how PNA was managing the Palestinian affairs. Let me just leave it there.
Say, I think some parts can be shared with the people. Today, at least, you can share a little bit of it.
No. I'll just leave it here for the time being.
Okay, so what sort of future do you see for that 87-year-old president of PA?
Ineffective. I don't think that he will be really acceptable so easily to a majority of Palestinians. But nonetheless, at the moment, there is no alternative. Where are the options? Unless there is peace, unless you come to basically establish the state of Palestine, that is when the question will come up who to elect as the president. Otherwise, you will have a president for PNA president in West Bank, and you will have Hamas rule in Gaza. And Palestinians, frankly speaking, they have no idea which way they are going. So I think the best way out really is the two-state solution, establish a state of Palestine, let there be elections in that state of Palestine, not in West Bank and Gaza separately. That will not work out.
Brijesh, is it really possible to say that when we talk about an invasion, to disconnect the military and the political part? Is it possible in any country?
Not at all. I understand, what the doctor was saying, that that you go ahead and, our first aim is just to, kill Hamas, finish Hamas off, and then we will come to the question of who will rule Gaza. But you cannot have this operation in bifurcation where you just go with the first thing and, then you try to decide on who will rule Gaza and how are you going to go about it. Is it going to be, several countries involved there till they elect a person there, and how exactly are they going to kill Hamas? So, there are a lot of questions which has to be answered, and I think, his approach is also of somebody who's angry also at the fact that his country has been invaded, so many people have been killed. There's an anger and there's an itch to revenge, to retaliate. But the fact of the matter, it's not going to be that easy, because if you start ruling Gaza, then the problem which you are trying to finish off will begin that very second when Israel will start ruling Gaza, or will try to manage the day-to-day affairs of Gaza. So you have to have a factor in as to which all personalities, which all potential candidates will be in the position to rule Gaza. Until you do that, any attempt to do that will be counterproductive.
But I think there is also one more thing. Let me take this question to Dr. Alexander Grinberg. Sir, do you think that the hostage issue is the real pressing issue? How to get these innocent people out from those tunnels where terrorists have put them?
I don't think that it is an issue, or maybe they're trying to exhaust all the options of dealing with the Hamas through Qatar. But I think that it is impossible, because there's only one way to get the hostages out, is to stop ceasefire, and of course Hamas will require more and more, which is tantamount to the destruction of the state. A country cannot agree to that. Of course, amid war, and of course, it's not like, it's not a soldier prisoners, it's not like several terrorists take hostages in a school or in a building inside the country. It was, these people were abducted from their homes after a horrible massacre. And a country that surrenders to the requirements of enemies just has no right to exist. This is how a normal country wants. I also would add to contest the words of the respected ambassador about unhappiness. It sounds like, it's okay, they are, what do you want? They are barbaric because they're unhappy. I'm sure that in a huge country like India, there are very many places where the life is objectively worse than in Gaza. Still, people in India don't kill anyone, don't butcher Jews or anyone else. And okay, the problems of Gaza stem first of all, from the fact that this population is primitive, barbaric, and dysfunctional. The population of Pakistan is Kafir tot ka gaya, Avam Islam ke fat, all these slogans. So they exist because of a certain ideology, not because of the people of Pakistan are unhappy or they're not, they don't live differently from Indians, right? So this is the first problem. And if this population is dysfunctional, primitive, and cruel, so it will always experience difficulties and problems, as it is the case across the world. My father grew up in Kiev, in Ukraine, after the liberation of the Second World War. There was a starvation. Children died because they used to play with weapons and living ammunition left on the bodies of dead bodies of German and Soviet soldiers. Still, my father became a doctor and researcher of medical genetics. None of my family became a terrorist or a criminal, despite they were unhappy.
No, see, there is. I don't want to recontextualize an experience, if I have to put it academically. Every experience has a context. Rajesh, you wanted to come in?
No, I'm just saying that, what he's saying, I understand his feelings, but the fact of the matter is that is Israel also factoring in what will happen after the invasion? You're talking about we will arrive at the decision when we'll cross that bridge. But can he actually do that? Can Israel actually do that?
Actually, Lev, that's the whole. That's the mood question.
And that is the reason why Israel is such
a mood question of my debate. Invasion is one part of it. Invasion is one part of it. So that is why I said military or political. Do you think that the end game is that the reason why it's being delayed? What do we do after we carry out a military exercise? Because after all, the people who are there, the terrorists, they are no match to the Israeli might, and they are no match to the Israeli army. They can defend, they can make it messy like Mosul, they can make it messy like Aleppo, but they can't match it. So ultimately, every military action has an end political objective, isn't it?
Look, the consensus in Israel is that Hamas cannot rule Gaza after the war. And the Palestinian Authority is incapable of ruling Gaza. And according to, let's say, the history of Japan, of Germany, we know that sometimes solutions erupt only after a victory in the war. So I guess this is the perception of most Israelis. Second thing is no doubt that the political clout of the families of those hostages in Gaza is much higher today than it was a fortnight ago. Let's say 15, 16 days back, Israelis were ready to get into Gaza even if many of the hostages would be killed. Right now, when we see that the government is hesitant, we see the pressure from other countries on Israel and so on. We know the history of Netanyahu with the Hamas. Yes, in a way, many Israelis tell Netanyahu, you have cooked this soup of Hamas in Gaza. So in this situation, the political clout of the hostages is also higher. And we see that Israel is hesitant. Still, I have to agree with Dr. Greenberg. If Netanyahu is not invading Gaza, he is kaput, he's finished politically. That's what his, let's say, aides tell him. And also, this is what most Israelis want to see. They want to see a victory over Gaza. I'm not arguing with the pollsters who made the poll that you have shown, but still I think there is a stable majority in Israel that we have to win the Gazan war.
Lev, can we say that the larger public opinion, which Dr. Greenberg contested, he said, well, it doesn't make a difference. It's solidly behind the move to take on Gaza. Do you think it can change over a period of time? The public perception of war, can it change? Like the way public perception of war in America changed. It did change, but it took 10 years. I'm not, but that's a different thing. But it did change. Perceptions do change.
Look, we have two contradicting energies that we feel in Israel. On one hand, there is a feeling that the Hamas people and the Gazan support for him is like the Nazis. This is on one hand. On the other hand, there is the sentiment that says, we, in a way, let's say, played down the Palestinian Authority, and we helped Hamas to be in such a strong position against us and so on. I think that only after some kind of a victory over Hamas, we will be able emotionally and psychologically to delve into what happened before October 7th. I feel that right now we need to see some kind of a victory over Hamas as Israelis were humiliated, who have friends and family who were raped, killed, taken to Gaza and so on. I feel that emotions right now as Israelis are part of the game. They're not outside the game.
Brijesh, your closing comments on this?
I completely agree with Liv that, that the fact is that, yes, and I said that in my opening comment also that, that when the attack happened, there was outrage all over Israel and rest of the world. And if that heat of the moment, that invasion would have taken place, it would have taken place. But, as the time, as the delay started happening, then, there were various factors which started putting in, especially pressure for America, the effort to localize the war and, make sure that it doesn't spill out over the entire Middle East. And also the fact that now, the families would also want, since the delay has taken place, to make sure that, those hostages are brought back in, and then an invasion can be launched. So, no more loss to life as far as Israelis and other, people from other countries, England and America is concerned. So I think that is also a dominant narrative. But there's nowhere, even if you go by the survey, the people are not saying that they are averse to invasion. All they're saying is now that there's a vast majority who had immediately agreed for immediate invasion is now saying, 50% of them now saying is that please wait for some more time, we get our hostages back and then we can launch the invasion.
Okay, and the most important aspect is, I leave you with the visuals. Invasion will take place, there is no doubt. If you look at the visuals of Gaza, which I'm going to put it here, let's put those visuals of Gaza, so that you understand that the sort of things the Gaza has undergone. The invasion will take place, and this strikes, or the strikes that have taken place, has been designed to hit at the terrorists, because what we see is a rubble, but the reality is that there are 500-kilometer long tunnels, 1,300 of them. So yes, Israel will go after the terrorists, but the question is what next? And the reason why the context of the debate is it just military, which is in context of preparation, or the American weight, or the American interest, or political, as public opinion changes and public opinion has a say on the government decision. It's a complex issue, but Israel is a democratic country. People matter, their opinion matter.
I almost did not want to find out that Rajiv Gandhi was corrupt. Is it possible for a Prime Minister of a country to tell so many lies? You cannot imagine